Okay, right, good morning, welcome to Swansea. My name's Dawn, I'm going to be taking you for this field work. So you've got your handout. So what we're going to be doing today is the human side of your NEA, so your examined unit. So next month in November, you're going to be examined on this inquiry process. And every year, WJEC, which is the exam board, changes something about it. So changes the methodology or the conceptual framework that you need to investigate. And this year, we're going to be focusing on conceptual framework of inequalities. So we're going to be focusing on that. So when you answer the questions in your exam, you need to identify which one you're actually talking about, whether you're talking about your inequalities one, which is this one we're going to be doing today, so that's the conceptual framework, or whether you're talking about your trans-X one, and so you need to identify that in your exam question. So we're focusing on an urban area today, which makes sense for inequalities. It's quite difficult to do inequalities in a physical environment out in the countryside. So we're going to be going through the 6 stages of the inquiry process. And we're going to start with the planning stage. We're going to think about how we plan our inquiry so that we can collect some data, so that we can present it, so we can write up the whole thing. Okay? So first of all, a bit of background. Can you ever think, what is inequality? So what does it actually mean? Where have you heard it in your life? Excellent. So yeah, people have got something and other people haven't. So we're going to be investigating this concept. So how are we going to measure it? How would you measure if somebody had something and other people didn't? Okay, what would you look for? What would you observe? How could you see if somebody was, and if different areas were at different equality? Okay, give me an example of something you'd see that showed deprivation.
Different sizes of houses.
There we go. Okay, so these are things that we can observe, that we can measure, that we can actually find out. Now, the government wants to know about things like inequality because, of course, they want to make sure that it is not equal. It wants to make sure that we kind of level up everybody. So in order to do that, they undertake a lot of surveying to find out. And what's the big survey that the government undertake that produces an awful lot of data? What's it called? Published last year.
I don't think I talked about that.
Oh, holy grail of geography and history. Census, excellent. Yeah, so the census provides them with so much data because you have to fill in the census and you have to tell them things like how much money you have, what your house size is, how many people live there. So that provides data. However, it happens every 10 years, so it goes out of date very quickly. And so if you think about it, it was filled in 2021. Think about if you were asked in a census question something like, how are you dealing with paying for your bills? Most people in 2021, hopefully some people will be saying, yeah, that's okay, I'm on top of my bills. Whereas this year, in 2022, think about the crisis we're in at the moment, things like paying for your gas and electricity and the cost of living crisis. If you ask that question today, the answer might be no, I'm not coping. So just a year later than the census is being published, the data is actually very different. So this is a big problem with our census data. So the government undertake other surveys more regularly. And one of them is the census in Wales for the Welsh Index of Multiple Deprivation. So they're looking for deprivation and they're looking for ways in which they can try and make things a bit easier for people who are struggling. And that index of deprivation they publish, and they publish it by areas or by wards, which are very small areas. So we can see that, so it's all published. If you look on your sheet, you can see the map. That's from the website, and you can see the different colours, and that shows us which areas are more or less deprived. What we can't do with this data is actually draw out exact numbers. So we can't say that people in the light blue areas are making this much money or have got this size houses. All we can say is the people in the light blue areas are more or less deprived than the ones in the dark blue areas. We can just compare areas. We can't get absolute values. However, it does provide us with some really good secondary data. Now on your sheet there is a misprint. Can you spot the misprint in that paragraph? Yay! It's the Welsh Index of Multiple Deprivation, not a B, but a D. So can you cross out B and put a D in there? And this index is really vital to what we're looking at today. With this index, because it's such a huge topic, this inequality or this deprivation, they need to divide it into domains, and they divide it into these 8 domains. So what I want you to do, talking to the person next to you, see if you can come up with the 8 domains that you think they've divided the Welsh index of multiple deprivation into. Okay? So 8 domains. Okay, right, now some of you have got this list, some of you haven't. So what we're going to do is we're going to go round, and each pair is going to say one thing to go on the list. And then if you haven't got 8 by the end of it, we'll see what we're missing. Okay, so let's start here. Can you give us one of those domains? Income. Okay, so make sure you've got income down in that list.
Okay, so everybody make sure they got income.
Next one. What have we got? Crime. Yep, crime. So another one is crime. Next pair. Healthcare. Health. So we've got income, crime and health. Next one. So the living environment. So yes, the environment, so the green space, what it looks like outside. Another one? Access to services. What do we mean by that? Access to services. Yeah, things, public services. Could also be shops as well. Access to food. Next one? Housing. Excellent. So the quality, the size of them, how well kept they are, how densely populated the place is. Next one? Education, yep, access to education especially, the quality of education. Next one. You got another one?
Parks.
So parks was a green space.
Yeah.
Yep, green space. How many is that?
Got 7.
7. Okay, so what are we missing? Have a look on your list, those who've done it. What are we missing?
Have you guys mentioned income?
Yeah, we had income. Employment, well done. So employment goes hand in hand with income. Okay, so just to reiterate, just in case you haven't got them, we've got income, employment, healthcare, education, access to services, housing, community safety, and physical environment. Okay? Now, if you were to come up with an index covering those 8 domains, do you think they are all equally as important as each other? No. Okay. So the government think the same. So they actually allocate different percentages to weight them, with the more important ones having a higher percentage and the less important ones having a lower percentage. So what I want you to do is to rank them. But I'll give you a clue. The 2 at the top have got the same ranking, okay? So 2 are going to be the most important. Then you're going to have another one which is not quite so important. Then another one's not quite so important, and another one. And the last 2, the 2 least important, have also got equal weighting. Okay, so have a look. Which 2 have the most importance, which 2 have the least, and which are the ranking of the 3 in between. Okay, so if we look at the way it's been actually weighted, the weight obviously tells us how much importance they base on it. So the first 2, the most important ones are? What are the 2 most important domains? Income and employment. Yeah, because of course you can't have one of those without the other. So they're equally as important, okay? So they get given a percentage of 22%. So next to those 2, if you haven't got a 22%, can you put 22%? Because that's how much weighting they get in the total overall. 22% for income, 22% from employment. Which is the 2 least important in the eyes of the government in this weighting? Physical environment, yep, so and community safety. It's a bit worrying, isn't it? So only 5% is put on their green space or their physical environment, so where you live looks like, and only 5% is on your safety. Okay, now this is something that you might want to debate. You may not agree with it, but this is the way they judge it. Okay, the other ones in between there, which is the next highest? So after employment and income, what's the next most important one in the eyes of the government? Healthcare. Okay, so think healthcare. Can you think of a reason why healthcare is so high up? It kind of links to the other ones, the other really important ones. Why do you think healthcare is put as such a high percentage? Why? Why is it important though? But why do you think the government think, yeah, after income, after employment, you need to have a high level of health? Okay, so we want people to survive. But what you're thinking about is if you have a low level of healthcare, you're going to have much more people who are either on waiting lists or who are suffering with disabilities or haven't got ability to actually go to work. So it links in with that. So if you've got a high level of healthcare, you probably are going to help them get into work and get a higher level of income, higher employment, and so you're having a lower level of deprivation. So healthcare is kind of fundamental to getting people out to work and actually surviving. The next one down, so the healthcare was 15%. The next one down is education at 14%. Why do you think education is quite high? Why do you think education is important in the eyes of the government? Again, linking it in with the other domains. Why do we need good education? Get a job, exactly. So you can't have income as being really important and then not having education as being important. So the higher the level of education, the higher the chance of you getting a good job and therefore a higher income. So it all leads into each other as well. Then the next one down, so that's 14% for education. The next one down is access to services. That's going down to 10%. So they obviously don't think that being able to use the bus, getting your food and all that is quite as important as having access to your education. And then the next one down, just above your lowest, is housing. Okay, so 7% of this deprivation is on your housing and what it's like. Okay, can you think about in ways in which we could actually measure or see, how could we judge some of these domains in terms of deprivation? Is there any of these that we could actually find out and measure them today by walking around the streets here? Housing, yeah. You can look at the housing, you can see how good it is, you can see how big it is, how well kept it is. You can see how densely packed it is. So housing is a really good one that we can actually observe. Any others? So under question 4, can you write housing down if you haven't got it down? So we can do that one, housing. Any other of those domains that we can observe here and measure? Access to services. So you just been dropped off by the shops there. I was standing by a bus stop, so all those are services and we can see how far these houses are from those services. So that's something, so write that down as well, access to services. Physical environment, yes, so we can have a look around, we can see the quality of the environment, looking for green space, looking for if there's things that have been vandalism, things that have been damaged, upkeep. So physical environment is another one. Any of the others that we can measure and look at today? Any of those other ones? So we've got physical environment, we've got housing, access to services. Anything else? What about community safety? Can we make a judgment call as to how safe an area is today? Yeah, it's your perception of it. So it's not necessarily the people who live there perception, but you can get a perception of safety. So can you write community safety there as well? Which ones out of those 8 domains wouldn't we be able to find out without getting secondary information today? So what can't we find out? So have a look at the rest of them. Health, yeah. So what we could find out about where the nearest hospital is or the nearest doctors is, but of course, especially at the moment, it's not necessarily about how far it is. It may be about what the waiting time is, whether there's a huge waiting list for operations. We can't tell what the health condition is of the local population because it's something you don't really want to ask somebody, is it? You're not going to go up to them and say, hi, do you have any disabilities? Is there anything wrong with you? Are you on a hospital waiting list? That's really intrusive kind of things. You don't really want to go up to someone and ask. So we can't really find out about health. What else can't we find out about by primary data collection that we'd need secondary data collection for? What else can't you really ask people? Out of those 8 things, what you really don't want to go up and ask people? Income, yeah, again, it's very rude to go up to someone and say, how much do you earn? And it's not a good thing to do in geography to have a questionnaire that says, how much do you earn? So again, income is something we couldn't find out primary data. Secondary data, we could get some information from that. Okay, what about our employment? Can we find out employment of the people living in these areas? Again, not really. You could ask them, but again, it's going to be something that's quite personal. They may not want to share it. We can get that information from secondary data. So these things are things that we can write down. So under question 5, things that we need secondary data for, finding out income, employment, health. What about education? Can we find that out? How? How do we know what the education of people living around here is? You don't, exactly. Again, you can ask them, but again, it's a very personal question. You know, how well educated are you? Have you got A-levels? Have you got GCSEs? Have you been to university? Again, something that can be, you know, a bit confrontational. So education is something, again, we can look up, but we can't actually get from primary data. So for question 4, make sure you've written down income, employment, health, and education. Right, question 6 then, where are we going to get this secondary information from? Research, give me an example. Google, give me a website that you might use. Police.org, yep. What's the thing, the holy grail that I said about? Oh, OS Maps, very good, yeah. Census would give us secondary information. We've also, we've got education data from the government. We've got jobs data. We've got data about bus and train timetables, so you can look up those. Because it might be you've got lots of bus stops, but the buses only come once a day. That's not very good access to services. You can look on an OS map and find out where the nearest doctors is, but then you can look on the doctor's waiting list to see if there's a long waiting list and whether they've got access to that. So lots of secondary sources, but all of them are going to be things that back up what we find hopefully from our primary. Okay, everybody okay with that? Fantastic. So when we do an inquiry process, once we've got our background and we know what we're trying to actually investigate, this case inequality, we need to come up with an inquiry question. Okay, so what could we ask questions about on the topic of inequality? So what could we ask questions about? We've just been through 8 possible things. So what could we investigate? Yeah, but within deprivation, what specifically? We could do any of those 8 domains, basically. So we could actually investigate inequality in housing. We can look at inequality in education. We can look at inequality in income, inequality in healthcare, inequality in access to services, inequality in open space, inequality in access to services. So we can actually just investigate any one of those domains, okay? So you can write that down for question 7. What can we investigate? Any one of those 8 domains. But what's going to determine which one we actually choose? Yeah, if we've got access to it. So we've already said that there's some that we can't get primary data for. So for 8, we need to be able to have access to that information. We've got to be able to see it in front of us, really obviously, or we've got to have some way of finding secondary data online. Okay, right, last one. We are also, in your NEA, doing transects. Okay, so have you done your transect? So with a transect, does everyone know what a transect is? Nope. It's basically a line that you follow, and along that line you do your data collection. It doesn't have to be a straight line, it just kind of shows you which way to go. And we can use that form of methodology, as it's called, that way of choosing our locations, by thinking about where do we expect this deprivation to change. So can you think of a line along which we could follow where you expect there to be different levels of inequality or deprivation? So think about a line. It doesn't have to be a short line, it could be hundreds of miles long, or it could be just, 10 miles long, or it could be 2 meters long. What might affect these levels of deprivation that we might be able to have a look at and see? Is it going to be, thinking about a line, is it going to be along a road? As we go along a road, is deprivation going to change? Does that make sense? Just following a road? Is it that you get further away from something? And as you get further away from something, the deprivation might change. Yeah? So what thing might we get further away from that might change the level of deprivation as we go along? Where do you think that really high level of deprivation is going to be clustering? Where it's going to be the most? I'll give you a clue. We're starting here and then we're going to go somewhere else. So where are we based? Or what are we close to? Swansea City Centre. There we go. So Swansea City Centre, that's our starting point for our transect. How could we have a transect or line that will come from that point, which would provide us with different places with different types of inequality? What would that line be like? Would it be a circle round it? Would it be a line coming out like spokes of a wheel? What do you think? If I told you to try and find some places which had different levels of deprivation, where would you probably move to or away from? From city centre. So you're moving away from the city centre. So that's what we're going to use our transect for. We're going to move along a line away from the city centre and find places which have got different levels of deprivation and compare them as we go along that line. Okay, so question 9, we're going to move, that transect is going to be a line going away from the city centre. Okay. Everyone with me? Brilliant. If you turn on to page 3, the most important part of the planning is to come up with an inquiry question. Now in GCSE, your inquiry question is given to you, but you still need to understand it and be able to justify whether it's a good inquiry question or not. So for our inquiry, we have our overarching inquiry question, and then we subdivide that into sub-questions. So the inquiry question we're going to be following today and trying to answer is, to what extent does inequality vary with distance from Swansea city centre? Does everyone understand that question? Because that is the most important thing. Now, when you do your exam question, they will ask you what is your inquiry question, and you need to write that. Great thing is, everything you write in this write-up, you can take in with you into your exam. It's the weirdest exam. You actually have all these notes with you. So you need to write that down, so you just copy it off there. Now that question there is so big, we've already said that inequality could be divided into 8 things. That's far too much for us to try and cover in just a few hours. So we need to pick which of those of our sub-questions that we can use based on those domains that we said we could actually measure. So I've divided it into 4 sub-questions. First of all, about safety. So how does the safety vary with distance from the town centre? Then housing. How does housing vary? And then environmental quality. How does that vary? And then access to services. How does that vary with distance from the town centre? Okay? Does everyone understand all those sub-questions? They're quite straightforward? Good. Now, in order for you to understand that this is a suitable question, I've given you a checklist. So we're going to go through the question, and I want you to say yes or no if it actually covers these checklists. So if it answers all of these checklists, all 8 things, then you know it's a suitable question. So does this question explore a geographical context? Is there geography in it? Is there geography in the question? Okay, what is the question? What is the geography word? What's the geography word in that question? Inequalities. So write that down next to number 1. That is our geographical context. Inequalities. Number 2, does it have a specific location? What is it? Swansea city centre. Write that down next to number 2. It is Swansea city centre is our specific location. So we couldn't have had, to what extent does inequality vary with distance from across Wales? That would be far too big, far too huge. City centre, Swansea, quite small, doable. Next, it is a type of inquiry. So there are 5 different types of inquiry. If you quickly read through them, can you see which one we are actually undertaking? Which inquiry type? Is it descriptive, comparative, explorative, or an experiment? If you're not sure what they mean, there's a definition there. So which one are we doing? Comparative, yes, a circle comparative. We're comparing different areas to each other. So circle comparative. Can we create sub-questions? We already have, so tick that one. Does this link to geography you've done in class? Good, tick that one. Do you think it is feasible for us to answer these questions in the time frame that we've got today? Is it going to take just a few hours, not days and days? You don't think we can do it?
Can we get the data?
Can we collect it? Yeah, so we can actually go to these places. We can move further away from Swansea. We can look at the houses. We can collect that information. Yeah, tick that then. Do you think with that information you could create graphs? Do you think you could come to conclusions based on analysis, like doing mean averages and things like that to answer those questions? Do you think that you could actually evaluate what you've done and say what went wrong or what was okay? Yeah, so you can actually then complete the whole inquiry process. So tick that off. And then last of all, does it contain a task word? Now, a task word kind of focuses you in to get you to understand what you're doing. So for task words are using words like to what extent and the effect or the differences or how things vary or variation or impact. Do we have any task words? Which are our task words? To what extent? So you can circle to what extent, task word. Is there any others? Any other task words in that inquiry question? The word vary is also a task word, so we're looking for a comparison there. Because if your statement or your question didn't contain a task word, you wouldn't know what to do with your data. Now, if you look at the bottom of the page, question 7 is actually an exam question. So this is what they would ask you in an exam. They're not going to ask you to just rewrite your inquiry question and you'd get marks for that. You don't need, you can copy that straight from it. They'll ask you to justify it and say why it's suitable. So this checklist will provide you with all the possibility of saying why it's a good exam question, good inquiry question. So you can say that it relates to the spec. You can say that it's got a good location, etc. Right, if you turn over the page, what we need to think about now, so we've got our inquiry question, we need to think about how we're going to collect our data. And the way in which we collect our data really depends on what we're going to do. So how are we going to find out things like the housing? What are you going to actually do you think? Look at them? Yep. And how can you judge? Are you just going to go, oh yeah, that's nice? Oh yeah, we can look at things like the size. Think about surveys that you've done. Have you done surveys on things? How did you make sure that if you did a survey that everybody who was surveying kind of had the same things in mind and the judgment was something that you could put together into a graph? What could we do? Have you heard of a Likert survey? Likert? John Likert? Yeah. So what do you do to judge something in a Likert? What do you do? How did you give a ranking? So you gave it either 0 or 5 or a +3 or a plus minus. So yeah, so we can use this survey. So one of the things we're going to do is a Likert survey. So if you look, question 8, if you write down that we're going to do a Likert survey, so that's judging basically our opinion. And we can do that of the housing. So a Likert survey, Likert. We can also, using that same thing, we can look at the quality of this environment. So we can do a environmental quality survey or an EQS, environmental quality survey. We can also do what's called a perception study of things like safety. So basically you decide for yourselves how safe you feel in a location, and that is what you write down. So we've got a perception study or a perception survey. And the other thing we're going to be using is an epitome word. E-P-T-I-O-M-E. I can't spell epitome. Now that means that you basically choose a word to describe the location that you're at. And then we can put all of those words together to see if people are feeling negative or positive about that location. Okay? Right, we're nearly there. So now we know what we're going to actually do, how we're going to collect our data. We've got those ideas. I'll get through the specifics in a minute. We need to think about where we're going to collect our data. And deciding where we collect our data is called something called sampling. Have you done about sampling? Heard about sampling? Yep. So in the table there, you've got the 4 different ways of sampling. Which way do you think, if we're moving away from the city centre, which one of those do you think is going to be the best way to our sampling? Is it going to be best to do it randomly, or stratified, so divided into areas, or systematically as we move along somewhere, or opportunistic as we find places? Which one of those do you think would be the best way of sampling? We could, systematic, so we could move so many kilometres away from the city centre. That would definitely work. Any of the others which would work? Stratified, so we can say, right, this is close to the city centre, then we go to another area, like a little village that's a bit further away, and then another one that's a bit further away. So all of those, both of those methods can be used to actually sample. We are going to be using a kind of combination. We are going to be moving further and further away from the city centre, so we are kind of going systematically, but we can't just go every kilometre, because you might find there's nothing there. There's nothing to survey. There's no houses. You can't do a housing survey. So we're going to be using what we call our areas of services as our stratified locations. So the locations we're going to be doing, so if you write these down here so you know where we're going on those 3 lines underneath, we're going to be starting here. So this is our Swansea city centre. Although we're not directly in the city centre, why do you think we're not in the middle of town? Think about what we're surveying. Yeah, no houses, exactly. We're surrounded by shops. Can't do housing surveys. So we're basically at the closest houses. Also, based on the Welsh Index of Multiple Deprivation, this is actually very low. So we're choosing places so that we can see the difference. So we're going to be doing here by St Helens. So this is Sandsfields. This is our location for the first place. The next location, we're getting further away. We're going to get to Uplands. So that's our second location. We're going to look at the houses around Uplands area where they've got services there. The next place is Sketty. So again, we've got an area there with housing. And then we're going to go to Calais, getting further away from the city centre, but following those areas where you've got some access to services, but you've got houses there as well. Do you all know those areas? Do you know any of those?
They won't know those areas.
You don't know those areas, right? Okay, so you have no preconceptions, which is quite good, because when you go there, hopefully you'll get a gut feeling about, oh, this has got this kind of safety, or this is making me feel like this, or these houses are like this. So it's quite nice that you don't know the areas. If you come and you do know the area, then you might have a bit of a biased opinion about certain areas. I brought a school here the other day who actually lived in Calais. So obviously they're probably going to like it. They're going to probably have some nice words to say about it. But if you haven't been there, which another school hadn't, they got there and they went, oh, this is boring, don't like this. So it's going to be a bit biased, but it's going to be interesting also the kind of answers you come up with for those areas. And then last thing we're going to do, if you turn to the bottom, you are going to be collecting this data in groups of at least 4, and you're each going to have a different street to survey to complete this information. So to do a housing survey, to an environmental quality survey, come up with some measure of safety and come up with an epitome word. And for that to happen is you need to be aware of the hazards and the risks associated with the locations. So what kind of risks do we have wandering the streets around Swansea?
What's the risks, guys?
Yeah, roads, getting lost. Yep, write some of those down. Safety, so cars, being run over, getting lost, being abducted or, confrontation with other people. Dogs. There's COVID to a certain extent, not so much now, but okay, now in terms of the risk, we also need to minimise that, obviously. Now, hopefully you're sensible enough to know how to cross the road safely, but you also need to know where we're going to meet at the end, so you know you're not going to get lost. So you're going to have to use some map reading skills to literally get yourselves to your location and get yourselves back to the minibus. So there will be a bit of map reading that you will have to do. We also need to think about the ethics. We've already said about finding out lots of this information is a bit personal. So we don't want to make, basically to upset anybody or to cause any confrontation. So if you are doing a survey of somebody's house and you think it's pretty grotty, you're not going to stand in front of it and go, oh, what a dump this is. Look, they haven't even done that, because they might just be standing behind you or walking out their front door. So you do have to be ethical in the way you're actually collecting data. So what I want you to do is to walk down the street, having a look and thinking about all the things you need to write about. And then when you get to a place which isn't in front of someone's house, you can then tick all your boxes. Okay, try not to do it right in front of somebody's house. Okay, does that make sense? Right, so if you turn over the page, you'll be able to see how we're actually going to do our data collecting. You've got data collection sheets, and in your groups, in your fours, one person is going to fill in the data collection sheets for each area, okay? So make sure you don't all fill in the data collection sheets. You can talk about it and discuss what you're going to tick, but don't all fill it in, because you've got 4 in your group, and then you'll have one who does Windsor City Centre, one that does Uplands, one that does Sketty, one that does Calais, okay? You need to make sure that on your sheets you've written down the location you're doing and the distance from Swansea. Okay, so you must have those 2 bits of information, otherwise your data will be absolutely meaningless. So if you look at the methods there on that page, so that table there, this is our Likert study. So if you look at it, this is going to be telling us about the services in the area, and it also tells us a bit about the green space. So if you have a look at there, you've got a choice. You can either tick that it's really poor. So if you look at the statements by poor, if you think that that is the way it is in this location, you tick the -3 for each of those statements. If you think it's really good, then you tick the +3. Does that make sense? So you're ticking one box per line. So one says about bus transport, about post boxes, about the shops. So you have to look around a bit. If you can't see these things where you're walking, you do have a map that has them on them as well, so you can have a look round. Everyone okay with the Likert? Right, flip over then to the next page. The safety survey. So for your safety survey, you are going to choose a colour that represents how safe you feel in each location. So if you feel really unsafe, then it's a red. If you're sometimes unsafe or you're feeling a bit unsafe, then it's an orange. Mostly safe, it's a yellow. Really safe, always safe, it's a green. So you're going to choose a colour, and those colours can be represented by numbers as well. Everyone okay for that? Think about not just this moment in time and you being at that, in that street at that time. Think about maybe in the evening as well, at every point in the day, so it's not just that moment. And then the other thing you're going to do is come up with this epitome word. So this is a descriptive word that you use to describe the location you're at. And if you want in your group, because there's 4 of you, you can come up with 4 epitome words. You can all write that on the same sheet. So 4 words, and then we can combine all of those words from all of you for each. Okay? And then the last thing you're doing, turn over the page, page 7. The last thing is your environmental quality. So this is about the houses. So the first bit is about the houses, and you're going to tick again next to the statement that you agree with. So if you think it's high density houses, so lots of houses together, you tick next to that, that statement. If you think it's low density, so spread out, you tick next to that statement. Then you go on to the traffic, open space, and then the general quality. Don't worry about doing your totals. That's something you can do back at school. Okay. Does that all make sense to everybody? Because you will be on, with your group, you're going to be doing this on your own. Okay? Right.